It's loading to YouTube right now, so I'll officially get started once I see the progress bar loaded. And for those who are just joining, you'll be able to access the recording of that afterwards as well. I will also be sharing it in the event discussions channel on Discord. And we are live. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all, buddies, for joining us on this nice Thursday evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies in April 2020 because I want to make some buddies in design, and it kind of exploded to over 14,800 members these days, today. And for those of you just new to Design Buddies, you're welcome to join us on Discord. We have a lot of fun virtual events, very casual like this one. We're going to learn a lot of information from industry experts. We also have a lot of networking opportunities, mentorship, and connecting with designers from all backgrounds support on your very wholesome design journey. And all for free as well, nothing paid. All our services are very welcome to join us. And then there'll also be an opportunity to meet each other in this event right now through this networking sheet that will be shared soon. And we're super excited to invite Colton and Ludovic from co-founders of Kick-Ass UX back on again. We previously had them on for a design systems event about design systems, so make sure to check out that recording on YouTube. And Kick-Ass UX is an education platform dedicated to helping graphic and visual UI designers transition to UX, so you'll be able to ask them anything today. And previously, Ludovic was a senior UX designer at Smartsheet, where he designed product solutions and implemented mobile and desktop design systems from the ground up. Colton was also a senior UX designer at Smartsheet, where he worked across the entire product. In the last few years, he focused on solving some of the most complex solutions for enterprise administration and program management. And we also have a special partnership with Design Buddies and Kick-Ass UX coming February 1st. So make sure to join our Discord community to be the first one to hear about it. So with that said, so for this event, so just some brief logistics and housekeeping things. We will be alternating between questions submitted on a Google form. And if you would like to ask questions on stage live, where you can unmute yourself, turn on your camera if you wish, please raise your hand or direct message. Oh, was I muted? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I swear I lost everything.
Oh, okay. Where did I cut off?
I didn't, like, only about 5 seconds ago, maybe.
Oh, okay. Cool. And so for this event, we'll be alternating between questions submitted, questions you guys raise your hand, and also questions submitted in the chat live. And so we will feel free to raise your hand. If you have trouble finding the raise hand option, direct message me on Zoom so I can unmute you and ask. And so this would be a casual conversation. So that said, let's get started. So we'll start off with a question that was submitted. Just a good start off question. So how did both of you score your first UX jobs, and how was your journey and learnings along the way? Anyone's welcome to go first.
Ludovic, you want to take it?
I will take it. All right. Well, long story. That took years, actually. And for me, it was back when I was designing presentation slides, and I was like, oh, design is really interesting, and it takes into way more into consideration that one would expect in order to successfully communicate ideas and make sure that people retain information. And so it takes work to make something clear and useful for people. And the more I did that, the more I was like, well, this is just presentation slides. I want to do more than just visuals. And at this point, this is when I pretty much started to work on product design. And that was a brand new world. And that changed everything because of the complexity of designing for a product, which is at a totally different level, and actually solving problems from all kind of complexity levels. And so slowly over time, I didn't know I was doing UX design at first, but that's actually what I was doing. I was designing features with the end goal of achieving X, Y, and Z, until a few years ago, I got into my first official UX design role at Smartsheet, like you said, Grace. So that's pretty much the story.
As for me, I went to the school at University of Washington. I'll do my best to take you through the full journey. So I went to UW. I went originally to become an aerospace engineer, and then about 2 quarters in, I realized I was going to hate my life if I continued down that path, because I knew I had to do something creative. And so I switched, and I only had 3 years left, and I was basically paying for things myself. So I couldn't afford to continue onwards to a 5th year. So I had to choose some things that I could actually follow through with, which was political science and communications. Obviously not a lot that has to do with UX. But I started teaching myself like Adobe products at that time because I knew I wanted to do something like that. And so coming out of college, I was just continually trying to teach myself like Adobe stuff. And I started doing web work on the side, just like teaching myself that. And kind of ended up in a dead end job that I absolutely hated. And the long story short is the way that I thought I'd get myself out was by learning to build a board game. And it turns out actually I built the board game using the UX process from scratch. And I did the entire process from like research all the way through like handing off my designs to a manufacturer. And that game actually ended up on Amazon at some point. But that like told me exactly what I wanted to be doing. So like I unofficially got into UX in 2013, more semi-officially in 2014. And then after doing that, I was like, how can I keep doing this? This is so awesome. And so I found a bunch of books, read a bunch of books on the topic, and then eventually found General Assembly in 2015, did General Assembly and got in. And that's my origin story to UX.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I also came from engineering and then a little bit of games, not board games, but VR games, and then UX as well. So that's super
awesome.
cool. And so for those of you just joined, feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to come on stage and ask a question, or drop your question in the chat as well. Otherwise, we'll also be reading out questions from the submitted forms. And so I see a question in the chat. So what books do you guys recommend when you're starting out UX? Is there like a book that kind of changed your whole perspective or helped you a lot along the way?
Yeah, the one that I always recommend and like was like the best for me to start off was About Face, and I always forget who it's by. But it's the greenish blue cover, big About Face. That tells everything you need to know for the most part about UX. It gives you kind of everything. And so that's the number one book I would recommend for people looking to start and transition in. The other one that I like could not recommend enough is Articulating Design Decisions by Tom Griever, which is all about how you justify your designs along like when you're actually in the job and whatnot. And that's something that you need to be thinking about like throughout the entire time that you're in UX, like starting out and like, you know, senior, like you need to know how you're gonna be able to justify it. And so like having that thought process from the start, it will like make it so much better for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I mean, I would say the same thing where, you know, like the Bible is about face for UX, and it's definitely a book that we cannot recommend enough. It's pretty thick, it's pretty dry, yet it's very useful to really get all the information you need. It's true that if it all depends on the type of learner that you guys are, right? If you learn from reading, then go for books. If you learn from courses, open up a course, like be open to anything, do whatever works best for you. Myself, I'm someone who learns by doing. And so that's pretty much what I did actually to transition to UX. I created my own case studies, and I ended up not opening that many books actually. So all depends on everyone.
I definitely agree. Like for me, I've only read one book related to UX. It's called The Making of a Manager. Not really UX, but manager and in a UX design setting. I also recommend, it really depends on your learning style. So don't feel like you have to finish reading a book in order to design something. But books, people usually spend, like, these are by experts who spend years and years dedicating their life to that field. So you can consider those a source of truth. But if you learn more by doing stuff, then there's no harm with doing things. So it's all about how you learn, and both the books and also doing things are super, super important when you're breaking into UX. And so in the chat, Jason asks, I know it varies from person to person, but how long should it take to transition to UX, and does it matter on your previous work and transferable skills? So I'm just gonna assume what kind of transferable skills or what kind of like soft skills do you guys have picked on from your previous roles or from your life experiences that helped you in your roles as in UX today?
That's a vast question, and that's a one we really love, and actually something that we've seen in a lot of candidates is as soon as they realize that they want to transition to UX, it's because they already have skills whether it's visual design that they can apply to UX or psychology backgrounds, and then they realize that they can apply it to the research phase of the UX process. Whatever it is, people realize at some point that what they already know is what they can use to create that new career of theirs, which is in UX design in that case. So that's definitely a big finding. So whatever it is that you're really good at right now, augment it and try to see how that applies to UX. And that's a good starting point to get started, because that's a place of confidence, a place that you already own, and from there expand slowly.
Yeah, and in terms of other transferable skills, I think the one that can't be understated enough is communication. As a UX designer, I mean, you have to work with the PM, the devs, and like, you know, you're the one who ends up being the facilitator of design meetings. And you know, if you're doing research, like, and you don't have a researcher, then you're the one who's conducting that. You have to communicate with users, and it just all around, you need to be a good communicator. And so like that's something to definitely practice and to be on top of. But I like to think that all of us are good communicators in our own ways. And so that's a very transferable skill. And so that's another reason why reading a book like Articulating Design Decisions is a really good idea up front, because it can really help you start to think in more of a design perspective and like a UX perspective. In terms of answering the first part of that question, like how long should it take to transition to UX? I think it does depend on your background. With people who have incredibly transferable skills, like if you're coming from graphic design, visual design, UI, that sort of field, then like you're gonna have a much easier time, because like not like what you're gonna have to master then is the research side of things. So like the way that we define the UX process, we define it in 4 phases. And the first one is research and understanding. Second is information architecture and wireframing. Third is prototyping and usability testing. And fourth is visual design and handoff. And so like if you're a graphic designer, UI designer, then you already have like 3 of those ish, like you understand at least 3 of them. And like the prototyping part you might have to build on, but the research side is the thing you're gonna have to master, and how you apply that throughout. And so like from that, it won't take as long. But someone who has none of that, like it's gonna means that you have to master both sides. And so it'll just take me that much longer to get there. Hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, definitely. Research is super important, because when you're working in a company, from my personal experience as well, you really have to use data, both qualitative and quantitative data, to prove to leadership that this is a good product, or like prove to PMs that this is something that should move forward. And for the next question, I got a few questions that were submitted privately to me and one that was submitted. So I'm going to try to combine both. And a question that was privately messaged to me was, what do you recommend for getting your first job when your portfolio doesn't have the shipped products? And I guess maybe I've split these 2 questions apart, but for just like, I guess that's like a great question, because sometimes it's like that endless loop of getting no experience and having a job. Like you get experience through your job, but then you need experience to like get a job to get experience. So how would you guys like recommend breaking out of that cycle?
The classic chicken and egg problem, right? Yes. So one of the things that Colton and I believe a lot is to really work on a case study that you're super passionate about. And that really means that you don't want to do a case study that is a group project that you're just okay with, right? It's something that you're really passionate about, that you're really willing to investigate, research deeply, be willing to design to the next level. So much so that that passion that you have up front for that specific field or industry or specific, whatever it is for that case study, will shine through your work and through your case study. And that's one key that's often missing, is people just doing projects because they're handed over projects. And you can feel when they interview that they kind of halfway believe in it, but because it wasn't truly their own, or they were not fully passionate about it, it's like missing that excitement, that extra oomph, if you will, that you get from other candidates. Yeah.
And like adding to that, I think when you are truly passionate about the case study that you're working on, then you're willing to put more time and effort to make it look like the real deal. I think a lot of people, when they do their case studies, they make them like they kind of like BS their way through. where essentially it's like they show a little bit here, a little bit there, but like they don't treat it like the real deal. And essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to show recruiters and hiring managers what it would be like if you worked for them. And so like that's what you want to do. You want to put the level of rigor that you put into your job into this fake case study, if you will, and treat it like the real deal. So one thing I wanted to do for a long time, and like one of you should do this and get back to me and tell me if it actually works. I'm pretty sure it would kill in a great way. Is if you say, for example, you want to work for Google, like do a case study for Google for the exact team that you want to work on. Like find a problem that they have, do a case study for them and present it to them. And like, I bet you anything, it'll blow them away. If you treated it like the real deal and like you did the research, you did everything. I've been wanting to try this out or at least get someone to try it out and let me know what happens, but I suspect it would go incredibly well. That's one thing I definitely recommend. The other side of that too, to get out of that chicken and egg scenario that you can do if you like really want to have real work experience is reach out to local companies in your area, or like, you know, there's a lot of nonprofits, for example, who need help, or like a lot of places need help. And so you can do the work that like a lot of boot camps do, where they say, hey, we'll give you a real client to work with. You can do that work and essentially find someone yourself that you do the work for free. And then boom, there's a real deal case study that worked for a real client.
Yeah, definitely finding projects you're generally passionate about, not just like cookie cutter case study, and also working on real world projects where you get to ship it and launch it and like analyze metrics and keep iterating on that and showing your design decisions are super, super important. And I personally did one for Discord actually.
Nice.
I can also link it if anyone's interested. That was the first ever case study I ever did. It was super helpful because there was already a product. I could do some research on it. There's already constraints and already like target audience I could deal with as well for research, get more experience researching, as you both mentioned earlier, researching, user research, usability testing, super, super important skills as a UX designer. And so there was another great question in the chat that kind of segues great. And then I will call on Handika next. And if anybody would like to come on camera, make sure to raise your hand on Zoom. And so Selena asks, do you have any advice on showing portfolio, advice on the portfolio presentation piece? Like, how do you like showcase your passion? Like you mentioned, it's good to do projects you're passionate about, but like, how would you like present in a way that really communicates to the hiring manager? Like, I love this and I love UX and I really want to work for you without sounding maybe too cheesy.
I mean, yeah, that, you know, like the interview process is about what you know, your hard skills, and it's also so much so about the soft skills and the energy, the vibe, and how excited you are with using your verbal, non-verbal cues. And do you feel extra passionate about your work? You could take the exact same case study and have it be presented by someone who is very passionate about it, and you can feel their eyes are lighting up and you can feel their energy levels are high. Take the exact same case study and give it to someone who doesn't appear that way, and the yield will be very, very different. One will probably be handed over a job because it just shows, while the other one will not. So from a verbal, non-verbal standpoint, is very, very much like showing that excitement. And back to what we were saying before, that can be really shiny if you really cared about the case study at the first place. So before you start on anything, please really love what you're about to work into. If you're going to spend the coming 4 to 6 weeks on it, really love it. Like that's the number one criteria. It shouldn't be like a head level thing. It should be more of a heart level thing. And if you feel like you're doing it just to for the right move or to attract the right company, maybe, and if it doesn't feel right inside, maybe that's not the right way to deal with it, right? If it speaks to your gut, then that's a good sign, right? And then keep trying, keep pushing, and at some point, once the day of the interview comes, right, it will just be natural, right? It will just be natural.
And to add on to that, there's a couple of things you can do more like upfront that'll actually help in general, but it's not just about presenting like your portfolio piece, but just in general, making that go better. One thing that a lot of candidates don't do for some reason is when they're interviewing for a company, they don't actually try out the product and like have an understanding of that product when they go in. So like, first of all, you need to do that. And second of all, kind of along with that is have a why you want to like in mind for why you want to work there. Because they're going to ask you that at some point, and like you probably want to put it in your presentation as to why. I'm sure many of you have heard of Simon Sinek and his book Start With Why. There's also a TED Talk. The idea is like there's a circle that like that has three concentric circles essentially, and it starts with what is on the outside, how is in the middle, and why is in the beginning. And what he says is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And so essentially you need to have a why you want to work there like in mind as you're coming in. And then one last tip that you can do to make it go a little bit better as well. It's just a subtle thing as well. It's only people who actually see your real portfolio, but just make a design system for your portfolio, and then whatever that design system is, apply it to your slides for the portfolio presentation. And so that way it feels like everything connects, like you're one cohesive brand that no matter where you look, like you look the exact same and you show up the same way wherever you are.
Yeah, we've opened so many resumes, and then looking at the portfolio is completely disjointed, and it just doesn't feel like the end-to-end experience of that candidate was fully thought through, right? And that just feels like, oh wow, it's like you're in a ride, right? It just doesn't feel right. Yeah, good point. Yep. One thing that I really wanted to add is like even before the case studies, right? Is people want to hire people. They don't want to hire machines, right? I hope not. And if they want to hire people, then it means that don't be scared to show that side of you, right? And the About page is a great place to do this. Connect who you are as a person on top of your actual work, which is the case study. And that will also help, to kind of like break a barrier and help people to connect or want to learn more about you. Of course, you want to stay professional, that's for sure, yet give a glimpse of personality in your About page, and it can only help you for sure.
Yeah, definitely +1 to kind of making your case study presentation, your portfolio, and also your resume. Same font, same color scheme. Just because personal branding is another way you can stand out, because recruiters, hiring managers, they take like 30 seconds to look through everything. They're looking at so many, and personal branding, because I feel like the market is also like personally really saturated right now. Personal branding is a way, visually making everything look consistent, as a way to stand out in terms of what you're recruiting job. And we got some great questions in the chat. So if you want to ask in person or in real life, not in real life, but like physically, raise your hand. So I'm going to call on Handika next. So you'll unmute.
Okay, thank you, Grace. And thank you for the opportunity. I want to ask about something that I consider, because I'm in the future facing for the product designer actually. And I want to get some advice for you, because they have two resources that tells me for the technical things, like your advice before, that we have to build some case study and then a portfolio. That I want to know the better side, how you attract the recruiter without the technical things. What should we do with the non-technical things? Thank you.
What do you mean by technical? I just want to make sure I understand exactly what you're asking.
The recruiter with the HR.
Well, in terms of technical, are you talking about are you talking about the UX side of things, like the actual work you're doing, or are you talking about like code?
Technical UX designer. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
So, and I'm just going to reiterate the question one more time just to make sure I got it. So your question is really, how do you attract recruiters' attention from like the technical, from like what you've done UX wise? Is that right? Sorry, okay. Yes. Okay. I think it's one of those things where previously to, I don't know, a couple of years ago, it didn't matter as much about what you had done, what your portfolio looked like. It could be a little bit more messy and you could be more user focused. I think one of the things that people I think because everything has gotten so competitive, like you have to have a portfolio that looks excellent, first of all, for a recruiter to even want to spend time. So I think that's the first thing that you're gonna have to do is like, and like you can find countless examples. We have some on our website, many other elsewhere of excellent portfolios that you can find, and you can like look at their styles and then like emulate them, but don't copy them outright. Emulate them. So that's the first thing. The second thing to think in mind, to have in mind is, think of your portfolio like another UX case study, right? Treat it as if you would another UX project, where essentially what you're doing is you have your users in mind, who are recruiters and hiring managers, and you're designing it for them. And so start from like research if you have to, by going and doing competitive research, by interviewing any recruiters you can, if that's even going to be possible, like basically following the research process, and then like from there start designing things and get feedback on it early before like you even have it in any high fidelity side of things, and then bring it up all the way the fidelity food chain all the way to the top where it looks great. Like I think doing that, where you follow a full process to make your portfolio look awesome and have content that makes sense to them and is laid out properly, I think that alone will make you stand out, because you have structured your content in such a way. Now, from the content side of thing, the same thing applies. Like you need to be following the full process. You need to be making it easy for them to be able to scan your stuff and get into depth if they need to. Like I know that there's a lot of people out there who say like, oh, you don't want to overwhelm them with too much information. And then you have the other side who's saying, like, oh, you got to keep it short. You got to make it super long or whatever. And it's like, well, what do you do? Well, you do both. Like I basically optimize for both, where if someone wants to come in and scan, which, I've been starting a process of interviewing recruiters to like learn exactly what they're after. And I'm trying to interview across like a bunch of different companies. And in talking to them, they were saying they spend a minute to at most 5 minutes per portfolio on the very first time they come through. And so like with that in mind, you need to optimize for that, where they can easily find your projects. So include, in my opinion, no more than 2 to 4 projects in your portfolio. And when you go into a case study, it has like a high level overview of what the problem was, what your role was, what you accomplished, a quick summary essentially at the top. And then right below that, they can go through the entire details, like everything, or you can have it on a separate page, however you want to organize it. But essentially, like you're giving them the ability to see everything up front if they want to, and then get into the details.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One thing that's good to keep in mind also is like everyone, I don't know if it's because of Instagram and the Instagram life and everyone looking pretty, and but it's the same on the UX case portfolios. And what that means is that people tend to want to show what worked and they want to hide what didn't work. And unfortunately, that's only half of the truth. And everyone knows, hiring managers especially, that the UX process is not smooth. It's not just something you follow and that's it, right? And so highlighting things that didn't work or that helps you uncover a new problem or whatnot really helps to draw a better story arc than just saying, this was my problem, this was my solution, and being too cookie cutter like this. That helps you stand out, is say, when I learned through early research that my problem wasn't actually the real problem that I was expecting because of X, Y, and Z, and therefore I reframe my problem. This is much more interesting than just saying, here is problem X, and this is my solution, right? And so like giving more of that detail of what happened behind the curtain can also help you.
I forget what person I saw talked about this, but he was talking about story structure, and he was like, here's point A, here's point B, like, and it's a straight line. It's like most people expect their lives and everything to go like that. Like I had this idea that this thing I want to do, and here's the end goal, and like just go like that. And like imagine that life, or imagine a video game, actually, maybe a little bit easier to imagine, where like all you did is like there's a finish line and you just ran to the end and that was it. Like that would not be fun, right? The thing that shows like a good story is having challenges that you face. And so kind of coming along that line, like the real thing is like, yes, here's point A and here's point B, but there's a lot in between that happens. It's not a straight line. And like actually showing that in your portfolio is a great thing.
Yeah, definitely showing process is super important. If you guys ever heard of like double diamond, the divergent and convergent thinking and thinking of all your different options and seeing the pros and cons and why you chose the one you went forward to, how it balances like user needs and business goals, super, super important. So it's so easy to get caught up looking at Dribble on Instagram, like all these pretty UI icons. But in reality, like hiring managers care about your thinking process and how you're able to evaluate, come up with so many solutions and pick the best one based on data and things like that. So definitely process super, super important. I feel like a lot of me as a designer, when I was starting out, I was like, oh, I just gotta make it look pretty, but they care about more of the process. So definitely +1 on that. And we see a lot of questions in the chat. And so we're gonna call on Thomas next. So feel free, you can ask your question. And
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm working with a website agency and they do like the whole process from like design to marketing to code. And the developer is really good. And I've worked on other UI UX projects and the developers have not been so good, and that's caused some problems in like the process because they may not be able to implement the design very well. But I was just wondering if it would be useful for a UI or UX designer to learn how to code in something like JavaScript or Gatsby for like web applications and such.
So
Awesome.
yeah, this is like such a polarizing debate in the UX community. So I'll go ahead and say, like, I stand very firmly on one side that I don't believe that you should ever know how to code. Like, as in, like, you should know high level how things work. Because if you don't know how high level things are going to work, like that could be problematic because you might start suggesting things that are just technically not feasible. But at the same time, you can have a conversation with your developer and they'll be able to tell you if it's technically feasible or not. The way I see it is like they're paid for their expertise as a developer knowing code. You're paid for your expertise as a usability expert, right? That's the way I see it. And like, yes, you can be a unicorn and you can understand that and be able to do that. And there's people who can do that, and like more power to them, because that's awesome. But like, I think you'll be really spread thin having to do both of those things, and you won't ever be able to focus on what matters and have more impact, because you'll end up trying to implement something that like someone else should be working on. Now, I totally understand it from the side of like, hey, these people who are our devs, like they can't do it. And like, it'd be great if I could, but think about the time it'll take for you to ramp up. If they've been doing this for a little while and they can't do it, like think about how long it'll take for you to get there to be able to do it right. And then be able to understand it. Like, so for example, at Smartsheet, like I am pretty sure that like I know enough CSS that I could have been better than a lot of, or better than some of the developers, I should say, at implementing the designs that I handed over. The thing is, though, like I would have been absolutely useless in doing that in a way that worked with the back end and the systems at play. I would have destroyed the product. Like it would have gone down. And so, like, yes, there is total value in knowing code, but I don't think that you should have to implement it. So that's my long-winded answer to say no.
Yeah, definitely. I don't code at all. I work full-time as a designer. I don't code at all, but I work with developers and they do all the coding, and I got to ask them like, what are the constraints? And it's just implementable, things like that. Yeah, I see a lot of people commenting the favorite code. I know coding is hard. Yes, it's hard and it's okay. You don't have to know how to code to become a designer. So don't let that ever stop you all from going to UX design. Because I don't code. haven't wrote a single line of code at my 8 months so far at EA. So no need to code.
And UX design is pretty hard too, Grace, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
enough.
most of my day is thinking through problems and doing wireframes and high fidelity mockups. That takes up too much time. And I also write developer documentation as well.
Oof.
And but you don't need a code to do that. There's examples you can look online. So
there was a
yeah,
question
things like
I
that.
saw that I did want to answer. It's from Sunny.
Yeah.
Sunny says, I know that every company is different, but do you have any suggestions for transitioning internally within a company from a completely different role? So the reason I want to answer that is because, yes, I think like, I think that that's, first of all, incredibly viable. Like that is one of the best ways I think to get into UX, because you've already proven to the company that you're trustworthy enough to be hired. And like, you also then probably have a manager that can back you up. and say like, oh yeah, this person's awesome at their job. Or at least you hope that your manager would back you up and not get spiteful that you want to change positions. But like assuming, like, let's say that they're neutral, they don't really care either way. The thing that you can do is reach out to the UX team and just tell them that you're interested and that you've been getting into the field or whatever, and just open a dialogue. So like that's actually what happened at Smartsheet with two different people and potentially more who were on the customer success teams who transitioned to UX. One into user research without going back to school. The other one did go to school at UW's program, HCDE program. But that's such a great way to get into UX is by transitioning internally. So like if any of you are at a company now that has a UX team and you want to get on that team, start talking to them, tell them your interest, and then have them start keeping you in mind, and like potentially like ask for free work for them. If they're overloaded, say, hey, I could take that on and like use it as a case study that you could even like present to them to get hired. So there's a lot of things you can do to do that, like to get over to UX, and it's a really great way to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely transitioning internally because you already know people and you already got in, so it's like much easier. I just thought, I'm just scrolling around the chat. I might have missed it before. If you guys asked a question before and they get answered, make sure to post it again in the chat. Oh, there's a great question Shreya asked. I'm a college student looking for internships for UI UX design, and I'm wondering about interviewing working for startups, and most startups don't pay. How can you make sure you're not taken advantage of when asking for equity ownership of work?
Oh gosh. Well, it's not just about money. It's about money, of course, and not just, right? So there are two things to keep in mind when you looking to get a job. If it's a startup, and you're a junior, it's going to be hard because the team is not fully implemented. It's not mature yet, and it means that you're going to have to wear all the hats, from UX research all the way to visual design. If you feel semi-confident in research, that will not cut it, right? Or if you feel semi-confident in visual design, that will not cut it because you will be responsible for everything. So if you work for a larger company, though, that's a completely different thing, right? Because they're so big and they have so much, so many teammates in the design team that you can be handed over just one small feature, or you can be handed over just the visual part of things, right? And so depending on the spectrum of the size of the company you're going for, that will vary wildly. Number one, so that's number one thing to keep in mind before money, in my opinion. Once you have that and you're clear on what kind of designer you are and what kind of comfort level you have, then in terms of money game, I mean, that's really different in so many places in the world, right? Did they mean in the US specifically? Is that a US
I don't think
centric question?
I don't think I saw that in the question.
No? Okay. Apples and oranges. Colton, do you have any?
Yeah, I'm thinking through my answer on that. The thing that you could do is you could set a project date and saying like, I will do work for you on this one project, and you make sure, well, hopefully make sure, maybe talk to a couple of friends if you have any in the industry who could help back you up on this. But essentially treat it like I'm only doing this for a case study if they're not going to pay you. And so that way that you don't get overworked. But like to Ludovic's point, it's unfortunate, but like one of the biggest misconceptions, what is it in general, is that UX equals UI, right? I think everyone here, at least I'm assuming that many of you have heard that, like, or get confused by that. And the thing is UI is a part of UX, right? UX is huge. It has so many different things. It's a part of it. And UI is one of the 6 core disciplines of UX. And so like, if they're only expecting you to do UI as UX designer and they don't give you the opportunity to do research or the other things that make you a UX designer where you're user-centered, then that's a problem. And that won't actually build experience that you can then build upon in general, like for your career. And so you got to be careful in that way. That's why maybe like having a set deadline saying like, hey, we're only going to do, like, I'll work for you for 4 weeks or something like that, or 3 weeks. And like, you get a smaller project for them and you take it through the full process in that time. And then that's it. And that way you don't get sucked dry. I saw one of the comments saying you get sucked dry by them. You don't get sucked dry. And it's better for you. I think that's the way I would go about it.
Yeah, definitely set expectations in the beginning. For me personally, I was taken advantage of by a startup because when I was starting out, it's super, super easy to say yes to whatever opportunity comes to you. But in reality, there's so many opportunities out there. There's a lot in design buddies as well. And what really helped me personally suss out, look at suspicions of the situation. It's like ask people in design buddies, like ask mentors. So if you ever feel suspicious about a startup, I know there's like a lot out there taking advantage of people who desperately want experience. So make sure to be really careful about these things as well. You can always ask people in design buddies. Our mentors are here to help, and you can find opportunities in design as well. Don't take any advantage of. Learn so many lessons on personal experience. Just want to put that out there. And you have a lot of great questions. So I'm going to try to get through as many as we can and take a group photo in about 12 minutes or 13 minutes. And so Andrew asks, if your work is locked down by NDA, what's the best way to be able to showcase that or like use that to leverage, use that to like in your next, when you're searching for your next role?
Ludovic, do you want to talk about that one or do you want me to?
Go ahead. I will organize.
So to be perfectly honest, I haven't had a lot of experience with this other than being a part of interviews where other people had NDAs. And in those scenarios, I never saw their portfolio up front. But when they presented NDA stuff, like they either cut it out of their presentation, the things that they couldn't show. If they could show anything, they cut out the things they couldn't show. Or I've also heard of other ones where I wasn't a part of, where they had people literally sign the NDA or a version of the NDA that basically said, like, I'm seeing privileged information and I can't do that. That's gonna be a lot harder to get people to be excited about or like, be willing to do. So it can be tough. Like there's to be, again, like I haven't dealt with this a lot. And so I know there's a lot of resources online of people who have answered this. So I'm sure you can find this answer elsewhere, but Ludovic, what would you say about that?
Yeah, so it's kind of a tricky subject. And one of the things would be that there are different things you can do. One of them would be the most restrictive, of course, will be a password on your case study that's NDA protected so that you can have the full-on work unlocked if your NDA gets if you can sign the approval process or whatever it is. So that way you don't have to scramble and last minute figure out how you're going to present your case study is going to be there. But then that means that it's not public for anyone to find, right? So another way to do this, which is the second grade, is just hide the brand name and just blur like let's say if it's for Cisco, just blur the Cisco logo or just blur anything that could remotely help people understand what kind of product it's for. And that way you can still show all the work and just specify that because it's NDA protected that you cannot specify for what client it was. So that could be another way to get around that specific type of problem.
I see a really quick question I can answer that I know has been asked twice by Martina. Does it matter what platform or software you build your portfolio on? Is there one that hiring managers favor? I would say no. Like you can do whatever the hell you want on that. You can build it in WordPress, which I wouldn't recommend. Squarespace, Wix, Webflow, which is my personal favorite, but takes a little bit more skill level to kind of learn how that works. But yeah, the answer is no. It does not matter what platform or software you build your portfolio on.
These even Notion portfolios, you can do that too.
Oh, I have seen that. Now, to be perfectly honest, if I was like coming across a Notion portfolio and I was like in the hiring, I think I would not be impressed by that. Like if I was on the hiring committee for that, I would think that you're really lazy. And like, yes, you thought it through on Notion, but like I would expect it to be on a website that's your own.
I see a question by Cindy, which is interesting, that links back to what we were talking about earlier. Within a case study, would you recommend showing the problems that you've encountered throughout the case study or just in one section at the bottom? So that's a great question in the sense that like the problem is not static in a case study, right? It's like you encounter a problem or you believe that it is a problem until you talk to the user, at which point your problem changes slightly, right? And so you may start with an initial problem that then the early research invalidates or semi-invalidates or whatnot. And then you reframe it and you write another problem that is reframed based on the new understanding that you have. And so that way, like we were saying earlier, if you show that story arc, it's going to help hiring managers understand your true process. And so that's how I would answer that question. Place your problem sections wherever works best, depending on where you encountered problem and problem shifts in your UX process.
Yeah, and also sometimes you can have, if you have extra information, you can have an appendix section at the end for things that might be too detracting from the story, but also great information to present. And so Thomas asked, or Colton, did you also want to answer anything?
To be honest, I was checking the chat and I kind of blanked out. So I'd have to have someone tell me what the question was.
Oh, it was showcasing like, let me find the exact question again. It was like showcasing the problems you've encountered during your case study. Like, how would you document that?
Sure. So I think it comes down to how you document your case study in general. So again, nothing is going to be fully linear. It's not going to be like you use every single like tool in your tool belt to follow the UX process. And so one thing that could be really helpful is, for example, having a Google Doc. If you're in the most basic sense, is the most basic version of this. Like I think you could do sheets, whatever helps, and like document what the date was and what you did that day towards your case study. Like again, super basic. Again, you can do this in a sheet. Maybe that's easier if you're in Google Sheets. And that way you have a record of everything you've done and all the design decisions you've made. And like you could, and I highly recommend that in that you do keep a record of like, hey, you know, I had these 3 different designs that I was exploring and I went with this one because X, because there's a good chance that you'll forget that. At least I would forget that. And so like that way you have that. And so later on in the process, like actually when you're at the job, people will say, well, have you explored this? You can always come back and say, yes, I did on this date. And this is exactly why I didn't go that way. And so that is kind of how I would document it up front. Now putting that, like translating that to your portfolio, you're not going to have like every single one of those details. Like you're going to have some of those. And so just like having that at a high level, saying like I pivoted here or did this, like in your longer form of the case, like your case study in your portfolio, I think would satisfy that kind of like showing all the problems that came up.
Yeah, definitely documenting super important because you don't, I will forget, and it is so normal to tell yourself, oh yeah, I won't forget, but then you actually forget. So yes, definitely document everything, even though you feel like you'll remember.
Yes, that answers Thomas' question, which is how should I document process? Well,
I tried to answer both with that. I saw that question too.
Yeah,
so like Thomas, that's what I would recommend is doing that. Like you know, honestly will save you so many headaches if you have everything that you've done and like when you did it and like and why you did it, like especially the why.
Yeah, and try to keep it in a centralized place.
Yeah. Yes. There's a question that was submitted before that I think would be good for us to answer. It might be a slightly longer winded answer, so it might put us right up against time, maybe not. So the question that was submitted was, hi, I'm currently a graphic designer with a focus on sports and thinking about transitioning to UI design. How does UX different from UI? How does UX and UI differ from each other? And what are some good cheap courses to take to help the transition? And so I kind of touched on this earlier, but just wanted to talk through this again because I think one of the things that UX struggles with in general is that we've made ourselves sound super pedantic. And I think this is because like design didn't have a seat at the table earlier on. Like we had to really fight to get a seat at the product table. And so because of that, like we made all these crazy sounding things, like, and I know heuristic evaluation has been around longer, but we'll use like really complicated sounding words and whatnot. So one of the things that's come up is like user experience and user interface, and like they're different, but they're really not. Like UX has 6 core disciplines. There's user research, business analysis, content strategy, user research, information architecture, and visual design. And so like visual design, UI design, is just one of the 6 core pillars, disciplines of UX. And so UI is the visual side, UX is the whole thing. You have to be thinking about kind of more than just the visuals. And so like as a UX designer, typically you have more of an impact because you get to have a say in every one of the decisions along the way. As a UI designer, you typically don't have as many decisions and are more answering to your boss, stakeholders, clients, whatever. And so that's a huge difference between UX and UI. And so as a UX design generalist, you get to do the UI. Like that's something that like I don't think people realize sometimes. Like, and that's why I think the term product designers come out, because UX has gotten confusing enough where people don't realize UI is part of it. And so just know that you would be able to do the UI as a UX designer and have more of a say along the way. In terms of good, cheap courses to take, I know that Coursera has a bunch of free courses that are really good. At least I don't know the reviews. I've never used them, but to my knowledge are pretty good. We have a 7-lesson free course. And then but it also depends on what your definition of cheap is, because universities cost anywhere from 40 to 90, 100 plus thousand for a couple of years of going back to school. And then boot camps anywhere from like $7,000 to $15,000, $18,000. And we actually have a new course coming out on February 1st. We're opening enrollment. And that for our early adoption or early access is roughly $3,000 for 6 months. And so it just depends on what your definition of cheap is.
Yeah, definitely +1 on that. And also always, in addition to taking courses and learning fundamentals, working on projects and getting feedback is also super, super important. And so we have time for about one more question. And LinkedIn Learning in the chat, also great courses. Some of my schools have LinkedIn Learning too. YouTube is also a great one too. Design Buddies has FAQ New to Design in our channel with a bunch of resources as well. And we're actually launching a partnership with Kick-Ass UX on February 1st, so make sure to join the Discord community for that as well. And I'm going to pick one more question. I'm just trying to talk and read the chat at the same time.
It's hard.
Yeah.
So I see one from Juan that I'll kind of touch on something that we talked about earlier. So Juan said, you advised earlier that we could present a case study for a company that we are interested in. I think I missed your response. How would we know a problem that they're working on? So it's not that you're trying to tackle a problem that they're working on. It's that you're tackling a problem that they have. So for example, actually, Ludovic, how about you speak about what you did for Concur and Expedia?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, right? That it's not about, like you said, Colton, it's not about a problem that they are working on necessarily. It could be something that you are frustrated as a user and you want to fix. And based on that frustration, then you go into the human-centered process and do the interviews and all the necessary thing to fix this problem. So one way to find problems is, let's say you do a app that's on the App Store and you look at reviews and you go to the 1 stars and you will find a lot of problems with the app. And there you could find a lot of problems with that one app, right? If you don't find them convincing enough, find another app and you will find a bunch of problems. Another thing you could do is go on forums and see what people say about the product. What would they like to see in this product that's missing, or what's currently there that's not done as well as it could be, right? And people love to talk about the things they don't like, and usually it's kind of annoying, but here is great because it gives you a lot of problems for your case studies. So if you just dig online, you will find tons of problems for it. You don't have to know specifically what problem the company is working on right now. You will never know unless you were to talk to a designer. You reach out on LinkedIn maybe, and then they will tell you something if there is no legal problem with this. But usually that's what I did is you go on the App Store, you go on forums, and there will be plenty of problems to solve. And
the other way you can do that is, like, let's say that, for example, like one that I thought about doing if I wanted to work for Airbnb previously is like, a lot of trips I've gone on, I've gone with friends. And so like trying to coordinate with friends about which place you're staying and splitting the payment and like kind of all that, I was like, I really wish it did this. This would be really nice if I didn't have to go through Venmo and all this other shit to like get through that. And so essentially that's one thing you could do is you could say, I believe that this is a great feature that would be useful at Airbnb, because A, I want to work there, but B, I think it's something that they're missing. Like I came across that problem. I wish they had it. How would I do that case study? And then you follow the process of doing it. And like, so part of that is validating that the idea actually has merit by like, talking to users, seeing if they'd use it, getting an actual representative sample of their audience. That's one great way to do it. It's just like by the products that you're using now and things that you wish that they did, and like following through on that.
Yeah, and one thing, yeah, that's true. One thing to really remember if you do this though is don't fall in the trap of designing for yourself, right? Like UX is is the exact opposite of designing for yourself. So if there is something that you are frustrated about with an app, don't assume that the user base will be, right? Like maybe it's just you. And if that's the case, hopefully you don't bias your research too much, that you try to have people tell you what you want them to tell you. So be open-minded to really, if there is a problem that's close to you, to your heart, and you really want to tackle, it's really hard not to, you will have to step out of your own bias and preconception and be willing to go that extra step of putting barriers, right? So that you don't design a solution that you like because it's about the user. It's not about what you like. So please remember that.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing. And for me, I personally just reached out to people on Discord, varying usage of Discord, but also I love your idea of going to the App Store, and also the idea brought up in chat, going on Twitter to see all the reviews there too. So all these different places we can gain experience and research, which is also really important in UX as well. That said, I will go over some logistics, and I'll give people a few seconds to turn on your camera for our photo time. And you're welcome to bring any proper object as you want. I always bring this little bear on. And make sure to follow Kick-Ass UX on all their social media platforms. They share a lot of great tips about UX on their website and their Instagram as well. And also connect with the buddies on our networking sheet, and follow us as well, and join Discord for many, many free resources. And we have a special surprise for you coming up on February 1st. And if you join a Discord server, you'll be the first to find out. And thank you, Ashar, for plugging all the links. I'll give everyone a few more minutes, a few seconds to turn on their camera. And so for our photo, we'll take a photo, and then we will also do a group wave or dance or dab. Do whatever you want. This will be recorded on our Instagram story at design.buddies, and you'll be featured and are highlighted in our stories as well. And I'm going to take a few photos. I have a really huge monitor, so I can see y'all on one screen, so it won't be like that transitioning again. Cool. Feel free to like bring any prop you want. If you have like a mug or like a stuffed animal you want to bring on, you're welcome to bring that as well. I'll count down. Give everyone a chance to turn on their camera. Make sure to follow us all and gain access to free resources. I still see people camera. Oh my god, it's a dog. I'll bring my little Rakuma. This is my pet because I don't have pets in real life. All right, I'll count down. Ready for blast off. 10, 9, oh, someone's in the waiting room. 8, 7, 6, taking your photo. 7, 6, where am I? 5.
It's a wholesome photo.
Yeah, wholesome photo. 2, 1. Keep smiling. All right, now you can dance, wave, do whatever you want, and this will be recorded. Let me just double check.
That's right.
I have multiple monitors open, so keep thinking about what dance moves you want. Okay, I got it. Cool.
Oh, I wish I had my cat. I see Noelle with her cat. That's amazing.
Nice. Feel free to bring your pets on, dance with your pets, dab, jive, wave, do whatever you want. And this is going to be recorded on our Instagram story, so make sure to follow us at design.buddies, and we'll tag Kick-Ass UX, so make sure you follow them as well for more design tips. All right, ready, set, go. Hello, buddies. We are with Kick-Ass UX and a very wholesome AMA and transitioning to UX design. This is us with all of our buddies. Follow us all and help y'all have a wonderful, nice day. Stay positive and test negative, y'all. Thank you very much.
Every time.
Nice.
Yes, every time, like bad jokes.
Yeah, gotta love it.
All right, so that is going to be our Instagram story, and this concludes our event. Make sure to, again, stay positive, test negative, social distancing, flatten the curve, and hope y'all have a nice, wonderful day. And I will stop streaming on YouTube now. If Colton and Ludwig can stay just 5 minutes for a quick debrief, that would be amazing. If
Thank
not,
you.
feel free to join Design Buddies, everybody. This little recording with my little motivational speech about, not motivational speech, but little spiel about staying positive, testing negative will be recorded on there in our highlights as well. I'll be able to see you all on Design Buddies.